the National Association of Realtor settlement with the courts, and CNN says no 6% commissions anymore. Hi, I'm Amol Heda with Keller Williams Bay Area Estates, author of Thriving Through Ownership, and one of your friends. The reason I chose this topic today is you must be reading press, and guess what the press does? It just wants to get in news. And I wanted to get here and describe the issue, the origin, and its effects on the buyers, the sellers, the agents, and real estate in general, the topic at heart. So bear with me. It might get to be a long video, but I needed to address this topic. Let's get in right on. So in March 2019, Ola filed a lawsuit against National Association of Realtors and the local real estate boards and the listing agent and the brokerage that represented them. This was in Illinois. And in April, Stubbins filed a similar lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors, again about why is the seller paying commission to the buyer's agent. So this is the topic at heart. These two cases began this whole big issue. Now, let's first analyze how this works. The sellers, when they list their property, they put it on market. They generally work with their own agent, the listing agent. And the listing agent is the fiduciary, will help them understand and analyze the market, do their best to work with the sellers to expose the property to the most amount of audience or people that might be wanting to buy that particular property. And that includes the general audience, that includes home sellers and buyers in the area, that also includes international exposure, and the most important, the buyers' agents that are currently working with the buyer, their buyers, that match that particular property. And for most part, you must be seeing that these costs are paid for by the seller. Now let me first give you an example of how this closing cost business works. So let me give you the example that I've lived it back in 2000. I moved to this country in 1999, and when I moved here, within 1 year, I could collect only $25,000. The first $25,000 that I collected, I went and bought my condo right here in the Silicon Valley. Okay? Now, out of the $25,000, $5,000 were required for closing costs. Bear with me. Now, the purchase price of my home was $388,000. So let's round that to 400 for a minute. So $400,000. 5% of $400,000 is $20,000. So $5,000 for closing and $20,000 towards down payment, 5% only. Of course, I got the loan at 8.25. I paid PMI of $293, all that apart. So the 5% allowed me to buy a $400,000 home. Who paid the closing costs? The seller's commissions, the buyer's commissions, the closing costs, everything of those items here in Santa Clara County is paid for by the seller. So what does that enable me to do? That enables me to put the $20,000 that I had towards the down payment, and I could buy $400,000. Now, let's see what all the seller paid. The seller paid about 5% for the commissions and about 1% or so of the county transfer taxes, escrow fees, and everything. So the seller's costs were about 6% or so. So 6% of $400,000 is $24,000. Now, so this is the breakdown of how a typical transaction works, right? Now, let's change the gears to what the sellers think. Now, if the seller were to think that, oh, I'm paying $10,000 of the buyer's agent representation, I'm not going to pay it, which is what these lawsuits have done, and they have put the realtor's commissions on the scrutiny. Just imagine if the seller were to say, I'm not going to pay $10,000, what would have happened to my $20,000 of down payment? The $20,000 would have become only $10,000. With 5%, 10,000 being the 5%, the most I could pay would have been half of what I could pay with $20,000. So I would be able to buy the house at $200,000 if there was one available. If everybody were in that same position, yes, perhaps the home values would not be 400, they would be only $200,000. So what happened? The real estate market would drop by 50%. As a buyer, you would want it for that first property. But the moment you get into that property, don't you want your property to appreciate? And so, similarly, the sellers want the most price for their property. Of course, every buyer wants to bring it down. But if the buyers were to pay these closing costs at the time of entry, the real estate market would not be where it is today. So let's understand this aspect. Now, this is a bitter impact for the sellers. So suppose today this change happens, you are going to see, so let's take an example of $1 million home. $1 million home, you pay about 2.5% commission for buyers agents. So that would be $25,000. A typical down payment is $200,000. So $200,000 will become $175. Multiply that by 5. This buyer will only be able to afford $875,000 worth of a home, not $1 million. These sellers should understand that they will get dinged by 12.5% by not paying the 2.5. Yes, there is a flip side to it. So this is the impact on seller, that the whole market will be depressed by about 12.5%. For the buyer, they can afford less, so they will get the property for much less. But in effect, when you are selling, the buyers are going to be able to sell it for much less too. So the net realizable amount is small. That's the issue for the buyers. Today, the buyers can afford much more because the seller is paying for the buyer agent's commission. Now let's talk about the brokerages. So what happens? So now the change that is supposed to happen is that this settlement is going to require that the listing agent and the buyer agent don't collude with each other. They are calling this agreement cooperating broker compensation as a collusion. It's on paper. And if the listing agent talks to the seller, explains how this works and pays the buyer's agent, then we get this thing. The complete cycle is done well. Now this settlement is going to require that this commission that the seller is going to be paid only to the buyer, not the agent, from agent to agent. It should go to the buyer. So it will be in public comments or somewhere on some website where people will know how much commission is being paid to the buyers for buyer's agent representation. This causes one other problem, that the lenders will not allow the buyer to get credit from the seller beyond a certain number. So For the lenders, the issue is that more the down payment, the lender is more secure. If the down payment is less, the lender is not secure. And so the buyers are charged a higher interest rate if they are doing less down payment. So what happens with this being paid by the seller to the buyer? The buyer gets the money, the lender does not like it, and so their down payment percentage goes down. And because the down payment percentage is down, the lender will ding the buyer by the higher interest rate. The other effect on agents is that the agent's commission will feel like it is negotiable, because the buyers are going to get paid the commission directly from the sellers in their hands to go spend the way they like. And they are going to say, oh, I'm going to find an agent that works for $2,000 with me. Remember, when you go to a grocery shop, you don't buy rotten stuff. You buy the best stuff for the best price. But what the starter home buyer is probably going to think, oh, I can buy something for cheap, and that's going to be the approach. And the buyer's agents that are really worth the money, that are that much qualified, are probably going to step back. This is going to resolve very soon. I'm not worried about it. But at this point, this is going to happen. Overall, on the industry, real estate sector itself, we are going to see an issue. And the issue is about competence. You are going to see more incompetent people if you don't pay them. Do you realize why we are here in the Silicon Valley and why we get paid so well? Because we produce so well. So if you apply that same principle, we are probably going to see more qualified people come up, bring their value to the table, and be able to explain to their buyers as to what they are getting. And that's going to be the change. At the same time, if it goes towards, oh, let me find the cheapest person, the real estate, the way it is done, the high quality that you today get, the ethical way transactions are done, that might be a thing of the past. Or just like how it is in other countries. A lot of other countries don't have ethical practices. They are like the 1934s back here in the US. I hope this was helpful. If you think it makes sense, please share with your friends who are having this question. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are having this question in your mind. I hope this answers. Thanks for watching. Talk to you in the next one. Bye.